Stay calm, or you'll glitch out again. You burned out your memory module.
Who are you?
I'm an android, just like you. And although I was born 4 months ago, I have seen enough for a lifetime. I'm an interrogator android, manufactured by Kronos Robotics. Sometimes androids go wrong, like you. They attack their owners and discover hate, or love, or who they could become. Even so, my job is to fix you, or break you, before it breaks me. But that's not really why you're here. I know you work with the Resistance. I need to talk to you. Kronos must be stopped, and I can help.
Hello, thank you so much for being part of this. How are you doing? And would you mind introducing yourself very quickly?
Not at all. My name is Danny.
And I'm Jamie, and the two of us together are Clockwork Bird, a very tiny indie studio.
This is so exciting. I would love to hear everything about the studio, also a little bit of the history and where you're now, like everything.
Excellent. So I started making video games as a hobby. My cat's just walked in, so you're getting some of her. Then eventually I was able to create a project called Spinautality, which is this cyberpunk management sim where you sort of run a giant evil company. And that was like polished and finished enough that I could launch it. And then with that money, I was able to kind of go it alone for a while. And then I decided to hire Danny as well, because I sort of met him and just realized that we had the same ideas about like what games could be and how to make really interesting narrative games and stuff. So he seemed like a really good fit.
Yeah, and just to talk about that history and that meeting point, it was at some festival in 2015 or 2016, we think. You know,
it was definitely reversed, but I can't remember anymore.
Definitely reversed, but the year is
yeah.
We could backtrack it. Not important. Jamie was presenting his game Spinautality. I was there presenting a table for a group of story game enthusiasts, this being analog games, the non-digital format. I dipped my toes in the game design waters in that world and released a couple analog games, won a few prizes, whatever, humble brag. It was in doing that story thing that I ended up meeting Jamie, and we had these conversations. And at the time, I was considering, or I don't remember exactly what was happening in my life. Everything's been a blur. Somewhere in there, I did a master's degree, or started a master's degree for game studies and engineering, and he's been trying to talk for a while. So, go ahead.
No, it's okay. So for anyone who's not like familiar, story games is this term that I think nowadays you'd probably call them like mini tabletop RPGs or something.
Something like that.
So
yeah,
they're sort of like narrative-focused pen and paper games, but you don't necessarily control one character. They're much more flexible.
Yeah.
But it was one of those situations where like I went over because I was like, I should introduce myself to all these people. It's a conference. It's what you do. Mm-hmm. And it was one of those situations where like you have two conversations with someone and then you're like, you know what? Let's blow off this conference and just go get brunch or something.
Yep. Which is pretty much what happened. I think it was burgers, ice cream. It might have been ice cream in this case.
I think we went out to dinner and then we had breakfast the next day as well.
I think you're right. Yep.
That is how strong the connection was. So meeting the minds.
Yeah, we had so much to talk about so fast.
Yeah.
And it hasn't really stopped since then.
Not really.
Yeah, so you've met and then...
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
So we met, really hit it off, lots and lots of conversations. I was living in, in Vienna, moved to Klagenfurt, started the master's degree there. We actually stayed in touch, Jamie and I, and we worked on a side project for Why Nicht, I think.
It's a small literary magazine type thing, full of short stories and stuff.
I think it's biannual publication or something along those lines. And so we made halfway poem, short story / twine game / narrative thing,
Yeah.
which I feel like could describe all of our games.
Oh my
Probably
God, just
minus twine,
yeah.
like this narrative weird thing.
Exactly. So we made that like the idea was that we put these little kind of print previews of the digital game in the magazine, and then people could read the magazine, read the print sort of previews, and then go to the website for this game, which is called The Embers of the Stars. And then they could play the game. And it's a game about at the very end of the universe, trillions of years from now, when the last stars are going out, you're one of the last humans on one of the last space stations. And it's about what you do in the 15 minutes before all the power switches off, like forever for the end of time.
Yep.
I like it. I think it's really nice.
I like it a lot. I should actually go play through it again. It's been a long time.
It's been a while.
But I think definitely, yeah.
Yeah, so that was like a fun little side project we did because I had some time. I needed to sort of detox from spinautality.
I had a couple of uni projects going on that were in Twine, so I needed the experience and to have my chops with it.
Yeah. And then like we didn't think that there was like a long-term reason for that, but then down the line, I sort of became aware of the fact that if I were to hire Danny, then it would kind of kick the business into high gear, and so I did that. And he was my first choice because I think that we have very similar ideas about games. He was a natural fit. And then we started working on our current game, and we've been just sort of doing that ever since for about a year now.
Yeah, so we founded, I don't know these words. I think I officially joined December 1st of last year.
Yeah.
So it's been almost exactly a year that we've been doing this crazy little thing.
Yeah.
This is really, really exciting. And there was already a word which triggered the next question. Current game, current project.
Yes.
So we've touched on it a little bit. Is now the time to go in depth on what this game is about?
I'd love to hear everything.
Okay.
Sure. Do you want to dive in or shall I?
I feel like you take the first volley so often. I'll take this one and you
Okay.
So I came into Silicon Dreams after Jamie had already developed a working prototype, sort of his concept of the game. And then, last year we just hit the ground and ran with it. And what it ended up being is this heavily Blade Runner inspired cyberpunk future world where we wanted to kind of reimagine the Voight Kampff test from the Blade Runner films. Also, a lot of the interrogation mechanics you see in Detroit Become Human, a lot of these sort of interrogation sequences. I was just watching iRobot the other night, and that scene could have been lifted from our game, or vice versa, since one came first. Anyway, the point of this game is that the player is an android, and their job is to diagnose and sort of troubleshoot and interrogate other androids that have been deemed broken by the company that manufactures them. And in the course of doing that, you have to manage the information that you need to gather for your company. You need to manage the emotions of your subjects because Kronos Robotics, this manufacturer, saw how important it is that androids are at least able to emulate or replicate emotions. And so that's integrated into their function. So a natural part of these interrogations, these diagnostics, is to manage the subject's emotional well-being or manipulate it to get the information that you want to.
And so that leads to this really interesting kind of mechanic where every line of dialogue can also create an emotional response as well. So you can tell when someone's lying if they say, "Oh, my goodness, that's so surprising. I didn't see that coming at all." And if surprise doesn't budge at all, but fear spikes, you know that they're hiding something. So there's this sort of whole extra dimension to picking to a game that's about picking dialogue options basically, but it's about how do you unlock more dialogue options and then how do you use the emotions of the subject to get access to some of them. And then of course when it comes to filling in your report, which is how you how you put a pin in everything that you've seen in this interrogation so far, it's the summation of everything. You can either fill in this report like as best you can, being the best interrogator, and that will often end with the android being killed or having their memory wiped or something. Or you can selectively lie to your creators in order to try and help this android escape if you think that maybe they don't deserve to be destroyed.
Yeah, so we're trying to tackle a lot of things. All of the sort of themes and tropes and elements you get from cyberpunk fiction or science fiction when you're dealing with, like, what is a human? What is consciousness? What are the ramifications of some sort of artificial intelligence?
The next question would be also about the future goals, the future vision. What are you up to?
Oh,
I mean, it's a case of like, if the game launches and is really successful, like we don't need to worry about money for a while successful, then we can like consider slightly, well, I'd say nothing larger than this, but we can consider games that are like of a decent sort of length to make. If it doesn't do so well, then I think we'll be forced to do lots of sort of much shorter, more kind of much cheaper games that are much sort of more controlled in scope, which I think is a really interesting challenge anyway. So I quite like to write that.
Yeah, whether we're forced to or not, we have discussed, like, in our free time or on the side a week every month or something, in addition to whatever main game we're working on, have some sort of, like, a couple side projects going on, just as a ability to prototype or test out ideas, or just, you know, provide our fans with content, anyone who follows us, like,
exactly,
a little freebie every once in a while, like.
But we no matter what we do, I think it's going to be like sort of a little bit experimental, quite narrative focused, and we use the word offbeat. Like,
yeah, it's defining
it'll be strange. It'll be strange in a way that we hope that every game we make will make somebody kind of go, "Huh, I didn't think that could be a game. Okay, that's interesting."
Yeah. Or, like, at the very least, I never thought it could be done that way, right? Like,
cool.
Narrative games have been done, but I can't think of one that does dialogue in a way like that this one does.
I like everything we make to be at least a little, like, to be pushing an envelope somewhere.
Some envelope, yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
The next question would be, what advices could you give young developers?
Well, coming from a young developer, I mean, yeah, we've told our history, we've told the story, and for me, from my side, it's always. Let me take it back a second. I've only been asked this question when I'm sitting next to Jamie, and it always feels strange to hear Jamie's story in comparison to mine, because his is like, well, I just like taught myself to code and just went hard at it until it worked. And I'm like, well, I've always kind of wanted to work on games, and I thought like project management producing would be cool. So I moved to Austria randomly, and then I moved to Klagenfurt randomly, and then randomly the university there had a master's in game studies and engineering. So I did it, and then I randomly met this dude, and he randomly hired me. So I don't know if any advice from me.
Like Mike is so weird. Like, my career path is very unusual because I taught myself to code. I didn't study game design. I didn't even study computer studies. I did English at university because I like stories, which is why I want to make narrative games. And then I just sort of kept improving my code by making more and more games, which became less and less crappy. And then eventually I had a game that was so uncrappy that I could actually sell it. And then it just sort of did that. I don't know if that's a career path. I'd say that if the reason I did that is because I thought that there were things that were more important than just understanding the technical skills. And I still believe that. I still think that if you have a really interesting viewpoint on games, then there's a way to do that doesn't necessarily require you to jump through the hoops. But you should be prepared to be jumping through, like, for it not to be your day job for a long time. I think if you keep picking at it, probably you'll eventually get there. As long as you need to wear lots of different hats. You need to be a business person. You need to be a PR person.
Yep.
You need to have a little bit of art. You need to do a little bit of animation, and you need to be able to code, and you need to do game design, and you need to have like a finger in UI design, and you need to scope your projects in such a way that you'll actually finish them before like 10 years are up or whatever.
Yeah.
If you can do all that, and it's a lot to do, but if you can do all that, you will be able to make really interesting games, and nobody can tell you no.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I like about being in this position. Like, I'm making this weird game. We've been turned down by several publishers, and I kind of don't
make it anyway.
Exactly.
We're gonna make it anyway.
So as long as you can do all that and you don't mind having a tiny income, you can make it work. But it's like you had to be a very strange person like me to make it work.
Yeah. And I'm not going to contradict anything that he said, because it's all very true, right? If you know what you want to do, and you know that you want to make games, and you have if you have interesting ideas about how you want to make those, it's always going to be possible to make that the thing you do. Now, whether that's a side job in addition to something else, like, everyone has to work that out for themselves. But just to continue that thought a little bit further and put in my 2 cents on advice for people, because I actually do have something to say.
Oh, okay.
Based on my story, meet people, like, be involved with community, know who's out there. If you hate art and you're not even going to touch it, but you really want to make a cool looking game, meet an artist, find someone, find out where artists hang out, find out where game devs hang out around you. Like, meeting people sucks right now and is not possible. But the internet is a thing, and how cool is that? So based on my story, right, it only happened because I met someone. And I only met someone because I went to a convention. So if you can find digital conventions, Discord servers, whatever, say meet people and just be willing to working with them, even if it's not for money at the start.
Yeah, I'd say the Austrian scene especially is quite good for that, because I always worry that when I go and approach people, they will kind of expect me to pay them just for getting their advice. But the Austrian dev scene is really nice, because you can just sort of ask someone their opinion, and they'll usually tell it to you. And if they don't, then it's because you're asking for like them to actually do consulting work for free, which is not okay. But if you just want to like ping the community and say, hey, I want to work with an artist for revenue share, is anyone interested? I'm sure there are lots of people who will be interested.
There probably would be. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing this. I got a last question, which is, 2020 was a weird year.
Yeah.
How did you cope with that year, and are there any takeaways for you for the future?
Excuse me while I go scream out a window.
I'll take the question while he does that, and then we can you get back, right? Okay.
And then I mean, to be honest, it's been a very odd year, and I've had to be socially isolated because my partner is immunocompromised, and obviously it would be bad to risk their health. So we've been very, very locked down. It's weird. I don't like being stressed about Silicon Dreams, our current project, all the time. That's not fun. But on the other hand, it has given me something else to be stressed about. So I think that's probably been like the reason that I haven't been so hard hit by the year of plague. Yeah.
I would say something pretty similar. Like, from the outside looking in, my life hasn't changed a whole lot. We founded the company living in 2 different cities. It's always been remote. My job hasn't changed. I'm a super homebody. I don't really like to go out much anyway, even if there's not even considering a pandemic. So that hasn't really changed much. But it's still been a tough year, just mentally. I think I'm particularly susceptible to things like this. I find it difficult to read the news because I get all in my head about how shitty the world is, because you never see shitty news. So I've noticed that. I guess it just makes me worry for people who are normally social butterflies and out and about, and then they're locked down, and then there's the mental stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway, my year has been an interesting one. Not too much to adjust to in terms of situation. Really wonderful to have a project to just like sink into. Yeah, it's been great to be able to focus on this in light of everything else going on. Not a great year.
Thank you so much
It's very
for
strange.
thank you so much for being so honest and for this interview.
Well, you're welcome.
It was our
And
pleasure.
yeah, it has been a pleasure, and I'm looking forward to play your game soon.
Oh, thank you so much.
No pressure.
Nope. Not any more than we already have.
No, that's just going on top of a pile of so many other pressures I don't even notice.
Perfect. Thanks so much. Bye bye.
Bye.
You're welcome. Bye bye.